Okay, good evening, and I'm very happy to have this opportunity to be able to give this special shiur to honor the memory of my dear former congregant, my friend Marshall Epstein, Olav Shalom, and I want to thank Rabbi, who's with me here, and Chazaq, Torah anytime maybe, and most of all Rachel, who thought of me and asked me to do this, and may. May our words here be L'zecha Nishmas Marshall, and may his neshama have an aliyah. It's a little bit beyond the yard site, but Marshall was never that great with being exactly on time, so that's fine. Okay, so here we are. We are now in the days leading up to both Parshas Balak and the 3 weeks, which begins on Sunday, right after Shabbos. The 3 weeks, which are the 3 weeks of reflecting on why we lost the Beis Hamikdash, why we still don't have it, not just mourning over it, but that's really what we're supposed to be thinking about. Why don't we have it? And I'd like to focus on a theme that's common to both of these issues. If you ask most people, why did we lose the Beis Hamikdash? So the answer you get almost always will be because of sinas chinam, baseless hatred, which is a topic in itself. What does that mean? What kind of hatred is baseless? Which is this? Is there really such a thing? But hatred is certainly a problem. And in my studies this past 2 years, I've been studying to become a licensed tour guide in Israel. And I've looked a lot into Jewish history. And the level of hatred that was going on in the time preceding the Churban Beis Hamikdash, of the second Beis Hamikdash, was unbelievable. Way, way beyond Kamsa Bar Kabtso, which we're all familiar with. Deep-seated hatred, and maybe another day is the day to talk about that. But the truth is, I want to talk about something else, which is that the Gemara in Bab Metzia, Daf Lamed Amid Beis, offers a different reason. We'll see, maybe they're related. I'm sure they're related to some extent, but that's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara says an interesting thing. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Lo Charva Yerushalayim Ella. Why was Jerusalem destroyed? Al Shadanu Ba Din Torah. Because they did din according to Torah. That's an odd statement, and the Gemara immediately challenges that. Eladina de Megisa Lidina. What do you want? What kind of din should they do? As Rashi says, should you do din which is based on forcing people, on all sorts of negative things, on lawlessness? Well, of course we're supposed to go according to the Divrei Torah. What does that mean? So the Gemara says, "Ema shehe'emidu dinehem al din Torah," because they spaced themselves on din Torah. Okay, so what? The second half of the statement, "V'lo avdu lefnim mishuras hadin." They didn't do beyond the literally the line of law or the letter of the law. They only were doing things exactly according to the law and not beyond the law. Halavai, we should do things according to the law, we might say, right? That's why he destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, because they didn't do things according to the beyond the law. You have to understand what that means. But let's think about what lifnim mishuras hadin means and what it can mean to us. Certainly it means, at one level, going the extra mile, doing more than what's expected of one, being able to, as they say, even this is Chazaq, but I'll use a Yiddish word, be able to fagin. I don't know if there's no good English word for that. To fagin, which means kind of to be willing to hold oneself back and let somebody else have something, even if you're entitled to it. Fagin, let them have it. Not demand what is strictly speaking coming to one. Lefnim mishuras hadin. And I thought that this was an excellent topic to think about when thinking about Marshall, because he was the epitome of that, of lefnim mishuras hadin, when it came to other people. Always looked to help others, never sought honor for himself, often swallowed his pride. And when others didn't appreciate his efforts, and I'm fully aware of quite a few times where he tried to do things and people didn't appreciate and even had kindness on him, when all he'd meant to do was to do good. He always looked to do the right thing for everyone, to give of himself and to give everything that he possibly could. Even in the later years when he was quite sick, when he was weak, when he couldn't function, he would try his best to give. I remember one time when I walked into my office in the Young Israel and I see somebody's legs sticking out from the behind the desk, and I run, who is that? And it's Marshall. He's putting together a computer desk that he decided to buy for me, which he bought me many things. Marshall, what are you doing? I wanted to give this to you, wanted to make for you, but he barely could walk, but he's still down there and putting it together himself. That was just a typical Marshall kind of thing, which he would do. He had a heart of gold, and he would try to do as much as he could, to go the extra mile, to be helpful, and to be kind, and to be giving. So lefnim mishuras hadin is a wonderful thing, but it's an interesting halachic question. Is lefnim mishuras hadin something which is nice, and it's a midas chasidus, and it's tzidkus, and it's something beyond, you shouldn't just do the right thing? Or is it actually something that's required? And it would seem the Gemara we just read that whoever HaKadosh Baruch Hu had kindness on them, that they didn't go lefnim mishuras hadin. We think lefnim mishuras hadin is optional. You do it, fine. You don't do it, fine. What's this? What is this? What does that mean? When is it lefnim mishuras hadin extra? What is it? When is it actually required? So the Gemara in Bamitzia, also in a different place in Daf Pei Gimel Amud Aleph, has an interesting take on this, in an interesting story with Rabbi Bar Chana. Some say Rabbi Bar Huna. Rabbi Bar Chana is always the one with interesting stories, so I'll go with that. He had an interesting day. He had some workers, okay? In Israel, we could always think of people like that, Sabalim, right? He came and he hired some workers to go and take some barrels of wine and bring them either upstairs, downstairs, whatever the story is. The Gemara doesn't say really. But what happened was, Tavrule hahanu shalkulai chavita dechamra. Instead of doing the job, they ended up breaking the wine barrels. It all spilled all over the place, and he lost quite a bit of money on the job, right? And they were standing there, so they had all taken off their coats. I guess it was in the wintertime. So he wanted to be paid for the loss. They didn't want to do that. He took the coats and held them. He said, "Well, when you pay me back for my losses. That's when you'll get your coat back." So what did they do? Being good Jews, they sued him. They went to Rabbi Bar Chana's Rabbi, and they said, "Havlu, and what we want our coats back." He wasn't allowed to keep them. Amarle. So Rav said to Rabbi Bar Chana, "Havlu g'limayu, give it back to them. They should get it." Amarle, he asked him, "Dino hachi, is that really the din? Is it the din that I'm required to give it back to them? Or are you just thinking that I should be a nice guy? Or am I actually halachically required?" Amarle, he said, yes, it's a din, because it says, a pasuk in Mishlei, Leman telech bederech tovim. You should go in a good way, in the way of the good people. Says Rashi, Leman derech tovim, lefnim mishuras hadin. Beyond the letter of the law. That's required here. Interesting. And then he even goes further than that, believe it or not. Amalog. So you said, okay, I gave you the coats. Goodbye. I didn't want to, but okay. And they said, wait a minute, you didn't pay us. What? They want to get paid also? Amalu, they said to him, Aniya Yanon. We're poor. We're not people with money. Tachinan kuliyoma. We worked for you for those hours. The kafin and veles lebini. Now we have nothing to show for it. We have our coats, but we don't have any money. Amarle, Rav said to him, Zil hav agreo. You have to pay them. Amarle dinochi said again, really? Is that the din? I have to pay them? Amarle, he said yes. The orchos tzadikim tishmar. You're required to follow the way of the righteous, and therefore you have to pay them. That's how the sixth parak of Bava Metzia finishes. So that's very interesting. What is this about? Right? And the Shloh HaKadosh, looking at this Gemara, actually says, when he comments, he said, why did he not just say, I want you to do lefnim mishuras hadin, but he said, that's the din, because that taka is the din. The din is that you have to do lefnim mishuras hadin. Now, of course, what does that mean? When does it apply? And it's not easy to really put a broad black letter law kind of uh, getter on it. One might say that it's because Rabbi Barbachana was a Talmud Chacham, he was a rabbi, he was a respected person in the community. You need to act in a way which is a little bit beyond. You can't just sort of hide behind, well, the law is I don't have to pay. For you, it's Lidin. Some hold that's the pshat. Some hold that for any person who holds himself as a person of integrity, that's the pshat. It's difficult to understand and to know what's right. It's interesting in the law, there is a concept of justice and there's a concept of equity. In the olden times, there used to be courts of justice and courts of equity. In fact, in Eretz Yisrael today, the High Supreme Court sometimes sits as the Supreme Court and sometimes sits as the Bagatz, the Bet Din Hagavoah LaTzedek. And I was just watching a Hesped the other day, what just passed away, a very, very special chush of a person, a Justice Shmuel Tal. He was known mainly for the Tal law having to do with drafting yeshiva guys for the army. I'm not going to go into what that is now, but he was a person who I had the merit of knowing a little bit, given that my parents lived in Beit Vegan, and I would often see him as in shul, a tremendous Talmud Chacham and such a special Jew, and a person just dripping with integrity. And I saw an interview where he was speaking about how the Bagatz, when he sits as a judge in Bagatz, it's not about, so to speak, who has the best legal argument to win the case. It's about what's right, what's the correct thing to do in the situation. It's about yosher, it's about tzedek, and that it does not necessarily follow the rules, so to speak, of who has the best lawyer and who has the best legal argument, etc. That's what we're talking about over here. And a person, if you look lifnim mishuras hadin, a person who's interested in being the kind of person that Marshall really represented, a person who's not interested in what my rights are here, what am I have to do, what am I required absolute, but what's the right thing to do, what's the best way to conduct myself, how do I be a good person, that person will be Lifli Mishur Sidin. And it's interesting, I think this is very related to our parsha this week, the story of Bilam and Balak. I'll start with the Haftorah. The Haftorah contains a passage from the book of Micha. The last verse of that passage is very famous, especially in the non-Orthodox circles. That's almost Kol HaTorah Kula, where they said that you are supposed to be Asos Mishpat Ve'avas Chesed, to love kindness and to do Tikkun Olam. They get that mainly from here. But of course, the verse it's much more beyond that. What Micha says as follows: Shimuna es asher Hashem omer. I want you to listen to what Hashem is saying. Kum rivet haharim v'tishmana hagvaot kolecha. Arise, contend the mountains, let the hills hear your voice. Shimu harim et riv Hashem ha'itanim mostei aretz ki riv la Hashem imamo ve'em Yisrael yitvakach. Hashem has an issue with the people, and he argues with them. Ami, my nation, ma asiti lecha meheleticha. What have I ever done bad to you? How did I injure you? How did I tire you? Anebi, tell me. Is there something that I'm owing you that you're always complaining about me and leaving me and going for avodah zarah? What did I do? Oh, I know what I did. I took you up from Mitzrayim. I brought you up from the house of bondage. Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, and I put before you these three special, wonderful people, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, to lead you. And then Zechor ma ya'atzbil Balak melech Moav. Remember what the Balak, the king of Moab, what he tried to conspire against you. He schemed. Uma anaoso Bilam ben Baor, and how Bilam answered him. If you think of all those events, you have to recognize the righteous words of Hashem. And there's much Chazal on this, basically saying that we should understand, and that's not to go too far afield here, but that's a big part of the story of Bilam. Am Yisrael had no idea what was going on there. The only reason we know about it is because Moshe reported on it in Torah. They were sitting down below while these people were plotting and scheming against them and trying to do that, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu prevented that from taking place, even though Bilam was trying as best as he could to curse them. Right? So Bama Kadem Hashem Yikaf Marom, my people, right? He said, you ask, well, how should I approach Hashem? What does Hashem want? Ha'akadmenu ba'olos ba'agalim mishana. Should I bring him my offerings with my best calves? Hayurtzeh Hashem ba'alfei elim b'rivos nachlei shamen. Does Hashem want thousands of rams or tens of thousands of streams of oil? Right? Bechori peshi pri mitni chatas nafshi. Should I give my firstborn for my sins? Or is that what Hashem wants? No. Higid lecha adam matov. He has told you what is good. Ma Hashem adoresh mimcha. What is it that Hashem really wants from us? What is He looking for us? Ki masos mishpat v'avas chesed. To do justice, to love kindness, v'hatznei aleches im elokecha, and to walk humbly, to walk modestly with Hashem. That's what Hashem wants of us. To do kindness, to be humble, and not to be verblüzen with oneself. Again, all qualities that Marshall personified very beautifully. So that's the Haftorah of Parshas Pinchas, of Parshas Slicha, Parshas Balak. Why is that a Haftorah? So the simple reason is because it mentions Balak. Okay. But most Haftorahs goes way beyond just that one sort of surface reference, but it goes to the essence of what Balak and Bilam were about. And what that was about, there's many ways to cut to this, but I don't want to go for too long here. But one thing that is very famous and most of us know is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Perek Mishnah Yud Tes. Mishnah says as follows: Kol mi sheyesh biyado shlosha dvarim halalu mitalmidav shel Avraham Avinu. Whoever has these three qualities is a disciple of Avram. If you have the other three qualities, then you're a Talmud of Bilam, the evil one. If you have an Ayin Tova, Ruach Nemucha, Nefesh Fela, if you have Ayin Tova, these things, you can spend a lot of time defining them, but basically they are an Ayin Tova, means exactly what we said before, fargining, not looking at people in a negative way, looking at somebody and looking in the good eye. Not looking, why didn't I get it? Looking, be happy for the other person, right? That's Ayin Tova. Ruach Nemucha is being humble. Nefesh Fala is a person who's not looking to accentuate themselves, but looking for others. Such a person is a Talmud of Avraham Avinu. Ayin Ra, Ruach Gavoa, Nefesh Rechava. The opposite qualities of Ayin Ra, and a person who's arrogant and a person who's full of himself, that's a Talmud of Bilam. Okay, fine. Then the Mishnah goes on to ask a very strange question. Ma bein talmidav shel Avram Avinu letalmidav shel Bilam harasha. What is the difference between the students of Avram and the students of Bilam? First of all, why is it talking about the students of Avram and the students of Bilam? Interesting question. But what do you mean? What kind of question is that? What the difference between Avram and Bilam? Let's just finish the Mishnah. It says that the Talmidim of Avram Avinu will have a good life in this world and will get Olam Haba. Instead of bringing the pasuk, and the Talmidim of Bilam will go down to Gehenna. What kind of question is that? I once heard somebody put the question this way: when you're contrasting different things, you contrast things that are somewhat similar. I heard, remember of Kuperman all of a sudden, the way he put it is, what is between the Talmidim of Hebron and the Talmidim of Panovich? That's a question you could ask. You don't ask the question, what's the difference between the Talmidim of Panovich and the Talmidim of Berkeley? They're two worlds apart. They're somewhat similar. So are they similar, Avram and Bilam? And of course the answer is that at a surface level, if you look at it just at a very surface level, there is a similarity between Avram and Bilam. First of all, they were both great Nevi'im, and they were acclaimed by the people around them. And also a lot of the things that we see in this story, if we compare the story of Bilam going and the story of Avram going to the Akedah, there are similarities. Both of them get a nevuah. Both of them get up early in morning. Same words, vayakom baboker vayachavoshes chamoro, vayachavoshes asono. That they themselves, even both of them were wealthy people, they were so excited about going that they went ahead and saddled the donkey themselves, right? They went and did as much as possible. One might argue, lifnim mishuras hadin, more than they had to do, but in contrasting ways. Avram did lifnim mishuras hadin for the good. Bilam did lifnim mishuras hadin in the other direction. They were they both focused on what does Hashem want. They both build when the uh, the officers come to speak to Bilam and ask him to come with them. Right? He talks about how he can only do what Hashem wants. He only has to see what Hashem wants. But he's really focused on what he wants. Both Avram and Bilam were going to somewhere. But Avraham knew that Hashem really, if he had wanted to, he could have made a million arguments, as the Gemara says, as to why he should not do the Akedah, as to why that is against what Hashem had told him earlier, Kivi Yitzchak Yikari L'Chazara, and many other cases. He could have made many, many reasons of trying to avoid going to the Akedah. But he didn't. This is what Hashem wants, and I'm going to try to put my own feelings aside and go ahead and try to figure the Ratzon Hashem and to do what Hashem wants and to do it with as much of a whole heart as possible, even though it's the most painful thing he could possibly ask of me, the ultimate Baal Chesed, with the one son that he was born to him when he was 100 years old, who he sees as his entire future. He's willing to put them all on side if that's what Hashem wants, even though he's convinced it can't be. Bilam the other way around. He knows exactly that Hashem does not want him to go. And Hashem told him so very clearly. He does not want him to go, but he wants to find this way and to find that way and to go in, and maybe I'll make this argument. I'll bring that korban. I'll find a way to talk this way and that way. That even though I know what Hashem wants, I'm so lefnim meshura sadin, in a negative sense, to go. I'm going to find a way to try to do it. And then we see as they go ahead and proceed, Avraham goes with Yitzchak and goes with the Shnei Na'arav Imo, and the word that keeps being repeated in that parsha is Vayelchu Shnehem Yachtav. They went together. They went as one. They went and with a sense of purpose and with a sense of feeling together, and without Avram trying to aggrandize himself. On the other hand, Bilam, of course, we all know the story. He would only go unless if he had bigger, entourage. And then, what does he do? He hits his donkey. He beats it. He wants to even kill it. He's so full of himself and his own ego and his own sense of how did you do this to me and how come you're not letting me, that he's willing to kill, to hit, to hurt. The opposite of Avram. When we find when Bilam eventually goes, again, he's always trying to find another way and this way to go, to try to go away from Hashem. Avraham, after he finishes his, and he's given the good news that in fact Hashem never really asked him to sacrifice his son. He just asked him to offer him up, which he did. And once he offered him up, he could take him down. That Avram goes back to Na'arav, Vayelchu Yachtav, and they go back together. It's an opposite kind of way of behavior. And that sense of who Bilam is really at the essence of that verse, those verses that we read in Micha, of what does Hashem really want from us? Does he want us to bring a lot of offerings? Does he want us to bring this mitzvah, that mitzvah? Hashem wants those things, of course, in their due time. But the basic thing that Hashem wants more than anything else is asos mishpat v'avas chesed v'atznei aleches elokecha, to love justice, to do kindness, and to go modestly with Hashem. That's the way that Hashem really wants us to do. And that's often to go beyond the law, to forgive, to be able to do little fnim meshura sadin. People who are too punctilious about exactly finding what they need to do and doing it exactly this way, and often, unfortunately, and we see this all around us sometimes, unfortunately, leads to sinas chinam. There is a connection between here, because when people feel that I'm doing it this way and you're not letting me do exactly what I want, and you're not doing it the way that you should be doing it, and that it's your fault that this or that happens. So it's a lot of the cause of the sin of sinas chinam, rather than people understanding, I have my relationship with Hashem, you have your relationship with Hashem. Of course, we're all supposed to do the basic halacha, but I understand that each person is as their own individual. To be able to be willing to live with different people who have different opinions and different ways of doing things and aren't perfect. And beyond not standing on one's rights, choosing to be a Talmud of Avram Avinu and not Talmud of Bilam Chas v'Shalom. And that's at the core of what Parshas Balak is about, what it means for us, and that's another reason why this Haftarah is chosen to teach us not just about the specifics of the Bilam story, but to the Asos Mishpat Avas Chesed lesson that we're supposed to learn. You know how you should be? You should be the opposite of what Bilam was about. Okay, so may the wonderful memory of Marshall stay with us. May remind us to be kind and gentle, to enjoy life to the fullest. He loved life. He loved to laugh. He loved to be just to sit and to schmooze and to have just a great time with people. But he also had his ability to be serious about the things that needed to be serious, even when Hashem limits our options, as he was limited in the last few years, just to make everyone life around us be better. May his memory be a blessing, an inspiration to all of his sons, to Yoni and to Aaron and to Eliezer and to his grandchild, and of course to Rachel, and to all of us. May we learn from his example, and may HaKadosh Baruch Hu once again bring us together someday in a time when we'll all join together, Be'ava, V'reus, B'mishpat, B'chesed, U'tzedakah. Thank you for listening.